Welcome to another episode of the Measure Up podcast. I don't usually do the intros. And you're probably thinking, why is Simon talking right now? He's usually the friendly sidekick, the Richter of the show. But no, today I am the Conan O'Brien, and my guest today actually is going to be Jim, because Jim, there's been this big announcement this week, or not this week, just very recently though, about Google and they're coming out with Meridian. So you are, at least in my worldview, one of the foremost experts in the world on media mix modeling, and you're excited to talk about MMA. Do you want to introduce yourself to the fans out there? Do they know who you are?
Well, I think they know.
Yeah.
You said that right for me. I'm afraid I might not exceed expectations now.
No, you'll always exceed expectations. It is for those listening that we are recording this on Valentine's Day, so we are, there'll be words of affirmation and so forth spread throughout. But we are going to be talking about Meridian, and I think the reason why Jim is the one of the more qualified individuals to talk about this. One is, of course, you speak with a lot of people in this industry, but two, you consult directly with clients on MMM solutions, and when we're talking MMM, we're talking high velocity media mix modeling. And I think coming out of our conversation last year around just MMM, what's up? Like why do we have so many of them? What are the differences? Why does it matter? There's been a lot of hype, and frankly, I think a lot of perhaps misunderstanding about what Meridian does. So today, we're hopefully going to walk through that. But before we do that, what does Meridian mean? What is that word? Do you know what it means?
Yeah. So it is a town near Boise, Idaho.
That's true.
Which it is actually. I was looking at some things earlier, and
interesting.
I was looking at Google search trends for Meridian, and I'm like, why is there? Idaho was like the hotbed of searches for Meridian. I'm like, what's going on there? And apparently there must have been like a new Mexican restaurant that opened in Meridian. There's like people were searching, like there was a breakout term for Los Calaveras Meridian or something like that.
Which perhaps tells you how little the Meridian MMM is being searched, if that's dominating Google Trends right now. So
yeah,
I mean, it's niche, we know, but I didn't think it was that niche. Unlike what's more popular, Google's global release of a media mix modeling platform or a Mexican restaurant in this little town here?
Well,
they may be equal.
Yeah.
Man, maybe look, I may be misspeaking, and this may be one of the best Mexican restaurants in the world. Look, I live in Southern California. I've got a very high bar for Mexican food. So I go up to Northern California. I'm like, what is this swill? And it's the same people in San Diego. They come up to LA and they're like, oh, disgusting. And for what it's worth, I agree. Every time I go to San Diego, get a California burrito, so big. But Meridian, it's an interesting term. I'm aware of it in the sense of the prime meridian, all right, which is the line that goes through Greenwich. But I also believe that it means midday or south, and it's essentially a reference to the movement of the sun, from Old Latin or from Latin. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about Google's Meridian. So, do you want to give us a background on sort of how we got to this moment? What has just happened?
Yeah. So, Google just announced that they've made Meridian, their open source MMM framework, available for everyone. This was January 29th. Of this year. They previously, back in March 7th, because I did my homework and got the dates, back in March 7th of last year, kind of made the announcement, hey, there's this new thing we're working on called Meridian. It's open source MMM.
Yeah.
We're going to be working on it in beta. If you want access, sign up here. And, if you worked for a large enough company, they would give you access and work with you. And that excluded most people. So including me, I signed up for the list on March 7th and didn't hear until January 29th that I had access. So I was with the hordes of masses that were just waiting on with bated breath to get access to it. But it's something that's building on a previous framework that they had unofficially created called Lightweight MMM. It was also a Bayesian marketing mix modeling open source framework. So it's kind of taking that as its foundation and kind of building on it from there and improving it and making it more user friendly and introducing new innovative features and all that. So, they've had Lightweight I should have done my research on that. I don't know when they started that or when that was kind of put on GitHub, but that's been around for a couple of years at least.
A long time now. Yeah. I want to say at least 3 years, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, at this point, of course it has to be. I am genuinely curious about that too, but with all these, and just like the last conversation, like what is the difference? But why did one? I'm not going to speculate on people's branding decisions because those are always opaque and bizarre, and you're like, I thought it was Bard. No, it's now Gemini, or I don't know, the DV360.
Right, 5.0.
Oh, there are so many Googles where I'm just like, who is in charge of this? You're one of the greatest companies in the world, and yet you can't brand anything to save your life. But or you'll come out
branding.
with
Simon, branding doesn't exist. It's all performance marketing.
That's right. That's right. The 100%. Google is 100% performance. No. What is the? So they had lightweight, right? What was that? I guess how did lightweight compare to Robyn?
Yeah. So lightweight. So like the big differences between lightweight and Robyn. Robyn is a frequentist approach. It was up until very recently only available in R. So all the Python people were like, when are you going to make it available in Python? It is available in Python now, but previously it was just R. It's a frequentist approach versus lightweight. It's Python. It's a Bayesian approach. Again, it was unofficially supported. It was kind of put out there, wasn't really actively updated or maintained from what I can tell. Like it was a decent starting point, but there was little activity going on with it. That's kind of like the big high level look at like lightweight versus Robyn. I don't know if you have. Yeah.
I do. Well, the first question is, why do you think that Indiana Jones would be a terrible data scientist?
Wait, what?
It's because he's afraid of Python. And why was the pirate such a great data sentist?
Because he loved R.
Exactly. I'm here all week. Actually, yeah, I say I'm here all week. I have two jokes about this probably come more anyway. No, I'm genuinely curious about sort of there was this moment or perhaps this announcement from Google about Meridian, and it was tied into, hey, this is better for search campaigns. And I'm struggling with what that means. Like, how is a platform any better for any type of campaign? Isn't it all just predicated on the data that is being ingested? So if you have a granular enough data set, surely any platform would do. Or are we basically getting to the point where like, no, all these platforms have just like such inbuilt biases that like we should treat Meta like Robyn like it's gonna prefer Meta, and we should treat Meridian like it's going to prefer search. Is that how I should be thinking about this?
No, not necessarily. So there's a couple things to unpack there. One is, I don't know, where are you? I don't know. I didn't see the part where Google said that this will be better for measuring search. And I guess it depends on what you mean by better, right? Because if you're Google and you want to take all of the credit for conversions, then
that is exactly what I mean is providing the appropriate level of allocation in Google's mind as to the value of search, as in their worldview. This is a bias that they are open about. In their worldview, other MMM platforms do not provide the appropriate weighting for search, the value of search.
See, that's just rubbish, right? First of all, you can look at Robyn, you can look at PyMC, the other kind of two main open source modeling frameworks. They are open source. You can look at the code. I've seen people on LinkedIn and other places say, I'm not going to use Robyn. It's just going to tell me to spend more with Meta. And that's just laughably, provably false.
I mean, this is the entire reason why we believe in the MMM. This is the obfuscation of bias is the goal here.
Exactly.
I think if you speak to the data scientists that are working on these products at the platforms, they'll tell you the same.
Yeah,
it's the marketing message. And I think that's the challenge, is that what we're at this point now, and I don't know, maybe this is somewhat akin to the Google Tag Manager announcement years and years ago when they came out with that. They said, this is, code-free tag development, tag implementation. And you get into it and you're like, oh, this is neat and nifty. And it's not that. In fact, if anything, it requires more development resources. It is just a more streamlined way to do it. It is better, but it doesn't solve for that. And I even saw people saying, you don't need a data scientist for this. And I was like, what are you talking about? How do you plan to spin this up on your own?
I saw a comment from someone on LinkedIn, and I was so close to responding with vitriol and hate.
Yes.
And then I pulled myself
from the measure of LinkedIn account. I hope, just like you have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
But yeah, I was basically saying, making the same point. Like any marketer now can just use Claude and spin up a Meridian
Yes.
model in a half hour. And I just thought that is this, either they're like really trying to troll you and like just
I
put out
don't
this
think this is
really
coming from a trolling place.
controversial, or
I think
that
it's coming
they
from
actually
a little
believe
bit
it.
of knowledge being a dangerous thing,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
I mean, there's there's a reason why when Google officially announced generally availability for Meridian, that high up on the announcement on the post, they said, and here's 20 partners that we've worked with very closely,
Mhm.
trained them with Meridian. They're experts in this, and you can go and work with them if you need help. Because it's not just about the data science behind it. It's not about the how am I calculating the hill function. It's not about that. It's about everything leading into that. It's about what data are you using? It's about how much historical data should I have? Well, I have this channel here, affiliates. How should I handle that? I have coupon redemption affiliates and I have content affiliates, and those are very different things. And how should I think about modeling that? Or, I have prospecting in Meta and I have retargeting in Meta, but I don't have a lot of spend and remarketing. Should I separate that out or include it as just Meta? There's so many questions and decisions that go into the modeling that it's not like, oh, I just plug everything into Meridian and it gives me an answer. We're not there yet. We're
No.
so far away from that. So
What?
to say that you could
Yeah.
just like, oh, any marketer now can just spin up Meridian and throw it into Claude and output it to ChatGPT, and that sounds nonsense, but whatever. You get what I'm
No,
saying.
but that is, for better or worse, it's this combined moment in time where we're at the peak of, or the peak of inflated expectations with AI. What can AI do for you? And when you see OpenAI come up with like the operator solutions, you're like, well, I can use a computer for me. I'm like, yeah, I can use a computer for you like a 5-year-old. Because my son can also use a computer when I tell him what to click, and and it's like he's not really making decisions. He's really just following a process, and there isn't that much intelligence that's derived from it. And I think what we're talking about here is perhaps um, the weighted context that is associated with these decisions that aren't black and white. That is required when you talk about either the classifications that need to be made in terms of the data preparation component, but then also how you go through the process. So I guess I don't want to put a headline on this, but overall, with this announcement of Meridian, do you think this is a game changer in the industry, or is this just, hey, Google needed to come out with something to replace lightweight MMM, and this is it, but it doesn't fundamentally change anything. Does not create another degree of democratization.
No, it's definitely not a game changer.
Okay,
I would say it's impactful in the sense that Google is officially providing an MMM framework, right? Lightweight was unofficial. They never really talked about it. It wasn't something that their account managers were pushing on their clients, anything like
right,
that.
right,
With Meridian, that's completely different. They are actively trying to get their
yeah.
big clients working with it.
Well, I've even seen like posts from some of the top people at Google about this on LinkedIn. Right, it is one of those PR plays at this moment in time. So I did think that was, but to your point, like it is a shift in awareness. But is that
Exactly.
it? Is it just a shift in awareness?
I think so. I think shift in awareness is a big thing, right? Like
Mhm.
anytime Google comes out with an official product and is shouting it from the mountaintops, well, that helps me, right? That helps get the word out, helps, all of their ability to communicate things
Sure.
and raise awareness of it is huge. So that's good for companies like Causal Analytics. It's good for other consultants in the space. It's good for companies that haven't yet adopted MMM and need to start thinking about it. So
Mhm.
that's great. I don't think it's like I question where the mindset behind Google, why they decided to get into the game, right? You have Meta that put out Robyn. That's really the only, from their perspective, like a competition. There's PyMC.
I was gonna say, you don't think they look at PyMC?
Well, I don't, I mean, not in terms of, if I think of Google and they are thinking about marketing dollars being spent and how can we make sure that we keep getting advertisers spending their dollars with us,
Yeah.
you're not looking at PyMC and saying, "Oh no, PyMC, we don't want people using that. They should use Meridian." I don't think that's a consideration, right? It's
Okay.
very
Well, this is it. This is what's interesting though, and I pulled up the announcement as we're talking through this, and it says traditional MMMs built for offline media and branding have historically been unable to fully measure performance media like search ads and AI-powered campaigns. They then go on to say, so you can get more accurate insights, including a more realistic picture of how your paid search dollars are actually driving sales, since search has a high correlation with sales. What I mean, that is a stake in the ground they're putting there, right? Like they are making the statement that there is inherent value here. Now, I would like to see the sort of the incrementality campaign, like, I'd like to see the evidence that suggests this. But it is this piece I look at and go, okay, so it's this coupled though with a different data stream. Is that what you're understanding as well? There's a new data stream that's available with this.
Yeah, so there is. So this is one of the nice things with Google putting out Meridian, is that there are sort of tangential pieces that come along with it. There's the Google Data Platform, MM Data Platform, I forget what they're calling it, where you can get access to.
And they have 3 platforms with the name data in them, and none of them are related to MMM. So this is going to be interesting.
Right.
You'll find it eventually.
And so, yeah, you'll be able to get all of your data out of, Google platforms, and especially the kind of key things that make Meridian different from Robyn and PyMC is sort of the innovation around using reach and frequency data, as well as Google query volume. Reach and frequency data, I think, it's interesting because they're saying, hey, we have this model that you can use reach and frequency data.
Yeah.
And we'll give you reach and frequency data. I don't know how easy it is to get that from other platforms. So it's kind of this weird bifurcation where you're having a model that has reach and frequency data for these Google channels, but not the others, and how is that going to impact things? And then
and can I just, as a practitioner in that scenario, let's say you data inequality is what we'll call it, right? So if you have data inequality in the sense that you've got either a great degree of granularity or expansion of scope from one platform, in this case, you have reach and frequency data, and you don't have it from, let's say, I'll say Reddit, because I bet you can get it from Meta, but from Reddit. Do you then have a sort of a reduction to the lowest common denominator of you exclude it, or you include it and you somehow have to, I don't know, estimate what reach and frequency would have been else? Like, what do you do in that scenario?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I would probably opt to include it for the channels I have it for, and just not include it for the channels I don't have it for. And then when you
calibrate with incrementality.
Yeah, exactly. So back to your other point though, the question, the statement you read, or the quote you read from the announcement around Meridian will help you better measure performance marketing like search, because all the irony here, right, is that one of the pieces is that you can include Google query volume. You can get out of their data platform, whatever that is.
Yeah.
They're using that as a control variable, which in a way is saying, okay, we know that search, especially branded search, we'll pick on branded search, right? We know branded search is highly correlated with conversions. And so what we're saying is that actually now we're including Google query volume. So if we see the volume of queries for your brand going up, and then we also see, obviously we're going to see branded searches for your brand going up, and you're going to see your conversions going up. Having Google query volume as a control variable is going to let the model say, hey, if you didn't have that Google query volume, right, and the model just sees branded search going up, conversions going up, branded search is really valuable, it's contributing a lot to revenue, right?
Sure.
When we add this Google query volume as a control variable, now the model is saying, well, actually there's this other thing that's causing both of these things to happen. So it's actually, in the model output, it's going to say, well, branded search isn't contributing all of that. There's this other thing that's kind of raising both things.
Upper funnel media in this case, most likely.
Potentially, right? The TV ad that's causing more search, right? So it's funny when they say, well, now you can have better measurement of your paid search, or better. What was the way you read it? What was the quote? Says almost.
Well, there were two. There was the traditional MMMs built for offline media and branding have historically been unable to fully measure performance media like search ads and AI-powered campaigns. And the second part was, so you can get more accurate insights, including a more realistic picture of how your paid search dollars are actually driving results, especially since search has a high correlation with sales.
So I guess in the context of comparing Meridian to traditional MMMs, where maybe traditional MMM said TV drove everything and search didn't do anything, and now you're saying, oh no, now we're going to give proper credit to search, which is, I mean, if anyone's run models in Robyn, you'll know that search will get a lot of credit, especially branded search, if you're not careful about how you control for that, right?
Sure.
So they're like, yeah, you run a
Well, is this a straw man essentially of yes compared to traditional MMM, which no one is using? Not no one. You know what I'm saying? We're now in the high velocity medium mix modeling area, and that question is, or that attack, and this is not just Google. I think it's across the board. I think we, and for better or worse, there is still this. There are still folks out there who will say things like, "I'm not going to use an MMM. It takes far too long. You know, I don't want to get a readout 3 months after my campaign's over. It's not going to help me."
exactly.
And I think that probably is the argument they're hitting against. And look, they may have done the market research here that gets to the point of this going, yeah, you know what? Even though we live in this world, you and me, and people listening to this podcast most likely, there is a reality where there are folks who don't get that much exposure, and they do live in a world where every few years they hear about it and they go, oh, this is interesting. So to them, this might be a new thing, and they're comparing it to a Nielsen MMM readout from 2006.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah, it's not too many of us geeks that are looking at like comparing Robyn versus Meta versus Meridian versus PyMC and Orbit and
right.
Else. Yeah,
absolutely. But and one of the, I guess, so you're talking reach frequency. You talked about the Google query volume that they'll also have access to. One of the things I saw on LinkedIn, if we this honestly, we could do an entire episode where it's just like Simon and Jim read bizarre comments on LinkedIn, being like, or like troll or real.
Let us know in the comments if you'd like us to do that. I would do that.
Absolutely. We'll have a couple beers over it, and then we'll really get into it. But no, it's one of those things that I saw out there that folks were saying, this will do the experiments for you. That's not the case, right?
God,
like
no.
Is there an incrementality experiment design framework within Meridian or not?
Yeah,
it's agnostic.
No, the only place where experimentation comes into Meridian is that you can use the results of experiments that you've run outside of Meridian. Meridian is not going to help you design the test. It's not going to help you flight the test. It's not going to help you analyze the test. But if you've done that outside on your own through whatever means, and you have the results of those tests, you can feed that into Meridian, right? You can use that to adjust your priors to then kind of align the model or calibrate the model, however you want to think about it, with the test results.
Which, though, is also in PyMC and Robyn, right?
Yeah,
like
that's not right.
So this is not an isolation of feature.
No.
And look, for what it's worth, I'm not looking to. I broadly celebrate the fact that Google has come out with this, and the reason for that is, I think, just like we came around from our last call, and I came in like, do we need this many MMMs? Well, the answer is yes, we do, because competition is healthy. If you only have a single platform defining what the future of open source media mix modeling looks like, you end up with a degree of homogeneity, and frankly, a degree of maybe not wanting to experiment with new features, or not wanting to take this next level. But that is one of these things. I think what we're getting around to, unless you see anything other than the data stream that's now available, is there anything that is unique to Meridian that is not seen in PyMC or Robyn?
Other than reach and frequency, Google query volume, there's nothing. There are things in Meridian that are not in Robyn.
Yeah. Okay.
But PyMC. So I kind of think about like PyMC, Meridian, and Robyn. I think of like, this is going to be maybe slightly unfair, but Robyn, if you're just beginning and you're at the low end, yeah, sure, start with Robyn. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, go to Meridian. If you're a team of data scientists and really want to go all in and really have customizability and flexibility and to the likelihood functions and the prior distribution function, all of those things, then you're going with PyMC. Right? It has more features than Meridian, right?
Okay.
And some very specific ones. So one is
anything you would want to call out there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Time varying coefficients. That's the big one.
Okay.
So,
and what is that in layman's terms?
What? You don't know that?
Yeah. Well, I think we're going to get some new listeners for the first time listening to this episode of ours, right? Because they have heard about Meridian, and this may be the first real step they've gotten to the ecosystem that, frankly, is not coming from Google. And it's a healthy step for them to hear this. And so I want to be really not reductive. I want to be, entry level friendly, right? Have empathy for the business leader who says, I think I need this. I just don't understand why.
Okay, let's explain it starting with Robyn and working our way into PyMC, right? So Robyn is a frequent test model. And let's say you model on the past 2 years of data, and it's going to build your model and says, okay, here are the ROIs of your channels, right? That is an average ROI across the past 2 years. It says, This Meta prospecting had a 2.2 ROI across the entire 2-year period. It never changed, which we know is completely
Seems odd. Sure.
because your channel's effectiveness is going to change over time.
Yeah.
It's going to be better in some times. Maybe when there's higher demand, it's going to be worse. Times where there's lower demand, it's going to be a lower ROI when you're in an election cycle like last November.
Absolutely.
because all the money is being spent on political ads. So you're, like, it's going to change over time, right? Robyn says, just ignore that. We're just going to give you an ROI. Meridian doesn't quite go full time varying coefficients, meaning it models it in a way that gives you an idea of how your ROI has changed over time. It does not do that. But what it does is sort of a half measure, kind of in between what Robyn does, which doesn't do any time varying, versus PyMC, is it does have a time varying baseline. Meaning, so back to Robyn a little bit, right? Robyn says your ROI is this over time. It also has variables which represent the baseline. How many sales you would get if you didn't do any marketing at all, right? Oh. And those baseline variables are also static, meaning it's going to tell you the same value every single day or every single week of your model for the intercept.
It's static as a hard number, or it's static as a percentage of total?
Static as a hard number.
Okay.
There are multiple components of the intercept of the baseline and Robyn, so it's some of them vary, some of them don't. But in essence, it's all basically static. With Meridian, they have a time varying baseline, so it's going to in a way sort of capture some of the seasonality and trend data of your baseline effectiveness of how many sales you would have without any marketing, and it's going to change over time. So that it captures that piece of it. But again, with Meridian, your media channels are going to have a static ROI. It's not a time varying. It's not going to change over time. Now, with PyMC, this is again kind of going like good, better, best. Crawl, walk, run, whatever stupid analogy you want to hear from consulting. So PyMC does have the time varying coefficients, which means, it's going to show you how the ROI or CPA, whatever, of your channel has changed over time. So you'll be able to model that and see that. As a marketer or a data scientist thinking about this, it's good to have a model that reflects reality as you know it to be, or as you think it's most likely to be, right? We know that your performance of your channel is going to change over time. It makes sense to have a model that reflects that, because if you just have a model that says, oh no, your ROI is 2.2 for these past 3 years, then you almost start to introduce doubt in the models. Like, well, that maybe it's able to model the things pretty closely, and the R squared is good and whatever else, but in the back of your mind, you're like, well, it's not actually capturing the underlying reality of the situation. So how well is it capturing that causal nature between I spend in this channel and I get these results?
Okay. That all makes sense. And so maybe not to assert a Goldilocks reference, but is Meridian perhaps the Goldilocks in this scenario? Not too hot, not too cold in terms of MMM accessibility?
In terms of accessibility, I mean,
and utility, like it's like the balance of accessibility and utility, right? Because you don't want the entry. When you say team of data scientists work on PyMC, I'm like, well, that's out of scope for 80% of advertisers, right? Like they'll have one half time, like part, maybe the consultant, right? And they probably may not even have anyone stop. And then on the flip side, you may have people going, I'm going to spin this up in Claude. And you're like, oh, good luck, And so there's the sort of like middle ground that is like extensible and usable enough while also being accessible.
So I haven't put a ton of thought into this, but I would say in terms of accessibility, I would still say Robyn would be the one to go with.
Okay.
Again, in the scenario where like either you have a team of data scientists or you have a data scientist, or maybe you just have a really smart technical marketer. If you just have a really smart technical marketer or maybe a data scientist, Robyn is probably going to be easier to get up and running.
But with linear coefficients, though, isn't that inherently abstract from reality?
It is, but it's.
And so the question is, is an exercise in modeling if it doesn't provide guidance of any value at all?
Right. Well, it doesn't matter. So I'm walking back my statement before about like we want a model that captures the underlying reality.
Sure.
Just because Robyn doesn't have time varying coefficients doesn't mean it can't be useful, right?
Okay.
If you have a model that says, in essence, it's all correlation, right? It's like, we looked at this historical data and it looks like this channel has this ROI, and it's going to give you some direction. Like, what are you using the model for? Is to help you make decisions. And if you run a model in Robyn and you've done a good job with it, it has a decent model fit, and you've done some holdout, you've done some, with Robyn, you can do time series validation. It's not perfect and it's flawed in a couple of ways, but it can kind of let you know how off the model might be.
Sure.
That can still help you make decisions. It can say, okay, here's this channel where, Meta was saying the ROI was only 0.7. The model says it's 5.6 because it's like some upper funnel channel and the conversion happens offline. And so it never sees the conversion data. Now we have, okay, great. The model helped me figure something out. I'm going to test into that. I'm going to like quadruple my budget and see what happens, see if there's diminishing returns and so forth. So it's not that it's not useful because it's not trying to capture the reality. It can still be useful. I would say it's also, again, it's probably easier for someone who's not a hardcore data scientist and also understands marketing very well to kind of get up and running with.
Okay.
I would say Meridian and PyMC are pretty close. I wouldn't say that Meridian's like a Goldilocks. It's like in between Robyn and PyMC. I would say it's closer to the PyMC end of the scale in terms of the knowledge and skills you would need to kind of get it up and running effectively and have a good model, right? It's easy to create a model. Like,
sure.
They give you the demo notebook. You could put your data into that and have a model in less than 10 minutes. Like, no joke. It's stupidly easy to get a model out of it. That's also dangerous because
It is.
You can have a model that is completely ridiculous. And if you're lucky, you'll see how ridiculous it is. So I've had a client that did this. They ran the demo notebook and it said their baseline sales was negative $1 million.
So, meaning every year they would lose $1 million, like just by existing, people would return products then essentially.
Yeah.
Like, no one would even buy anything. They would just return things they bought in the past.
Exactly. And media drove 110% of all conversions because baseline was, they were starting negative.
Of course,
so
Meridian prevented the returns and drove new sales.
Yeah. So like in that case, it's good. Like they realized how ridiculous that was and clearly did not start making decisions with it. But the scarier thing is, what if you get a model that looks plausible and okay, yeah, let's go with it. Like, there's still a lot that is missing from a lot of the open source, from Robyn, from Meridian. PyMC, I don't know as much. I haven't used it a lot, but the idea of validation and robustness checks and out of sample forecasting. I know, so PyMC does have out of sample forecasting, which Meridian does not. They do time series validation, but not out of sample forecasting. Sorry, this is I want to keep this like higher level to for anyone who's not in the weeds, but like, so out of sample forecasting is saying, we built a model, we have our model, now we have new data. It's a new month. We got all of our new data. We have our the sales. We have what we spent on all these channels. And so now I have this model that I built before I got this new data. I'm going to feed this model my spend data and have it predict what it thinks my sales were going to be. I'm not going to show it my sales yet. It has no idea what my sales were. I'm going to have it forecast what the sales would be with this spend data. And then you can see, well, how accurate was it? Did it guess right or not?
Sure.
Right. And so that's something that you can do in PyMC. It's, as far as I know, that's not something that's built into Meridian. Either it's not there or it's not there yet. I haven't seen it. Again, it's only been out for a little bit, but we'll correct this if I find out I was wrong. Tell me.
We may even do 6 months from now, hands on keys, like a retrospective of that moment. But you bring up something there which is interesting, which is features, and I think what maybe we've established to date or so far has really been, look, this isn't that novel in function outside of that data stream that we talked about. But as I think about the competition in the space, and this is good, where do we go next? Like what would, if you had, I know we just did big bets, but like if you had a crystal ball with like where these open source MMMs go in terms of feature integration or utility? Like what do you think comes in, or what do you want to see next?
The thing that I would love to see the most would be more robust validation
Okay.
tooling.
Meaning like just more incrementality support is like built like an automated incrementality.
No, not even so much that, more just specifically around the modeling itself. So doing things like robustness checks,
Okay.
like out of sample forecasting,
Sure.
other things that you can do to kind of poke at your model to see, is this good or not?
Yeah.
If I change my priors slightly, does it give me a completely different read on the model? There's a lot of
Mm,
things like that should be done to know if your model is fragile or if it's robust.
mm-hmm.
And if anyone wants to learn, from my perspective, the gold star in this, the people that kind of shout from the mountaintops about this is Recast. They have a ton
Mm,
of articles, videos, you name it, on the processes that they go through to ensure that their models are actually robust, that they're actually capturing the underlying relationship between the data, not just, randomly, correlations or whatever. They go through a lot of rigorous checks on their models to make sure that it's like you can take it to the bank, right?
sure.
And I don't see that level of importance to validation in some of the open source packages.
Interesting. And by the way, yeah, like for those who are listening, there's a Slack group that Jim has started called the MMM Hub. I think you can find mmmhub.org, right? You can go there, you can fill out the form to get access to the Slack group. And folks like Mike Kaminsky from Recast are in there, as well as others who like, I think some of these conversations fully more advanced, or like say you're a data scientist who you've been working on all these other things, and now your boss is coming to you talking about, let's get started with Meridian. That's probably a great place to start in terms of having these conversations and to be able to bring some of this knowledge back to the team to say like, well, rather than just focusing on just this one, let's actually think critically about what do we want at the end of this from a business outcome. What degree of confidence do we need to have? What degree of accuracy? I mean, look, from a business point of view, I'm still quite frustrated with the two component, one being the nature and scope of how incrementality test support is provided. Like that is still such a hurdle. Like everyone wants incrementality, but it is just the last thing folks either want to do, and then even if they want to do it, the actual planning process there, the markets, like all these pieces are just still quite cumbersome. And I, there are obviously platforms out there like House and Measured and so forth, which are of high value for this type of function. But those aren't as accessible to, like, you start adding on the tools and the cost and everything. You start go like, this gets really like, what is the cost of knowing these things? Like how valuable is this? And of course that is a factor of your marketing spend in total. But that's part one. And then part two, and I said this the last time we chatted in like the what's up with MMM, it really is the so what for the media manager, because I still struggle with the output here that it's not going to be calibrated to the platform. And until we see a point, and for I think when Meta introduced Google Analytics as a data point that you can use for optimization, I looked at that and said, I hate this because all you're doing is optimizing to clicky people, flying directly into the face of the Nielsen study. But I like the fact that you're bringing in an alternative form of measurement for calibration. If you can do that with an MMM, that would be incredible, and it would help us see eye to eye. Because right now we're speaking through an intercom in two different rooms, and it's very, very, very difficult to do anything meaningful other than set budgets. Is that? I mean, I don't know. Is that what you'd like to see? Like, I don't know, a bridge to the media manager. You think they'll do
Yeah,
that? Is that
this
possible?
was this was your big bet, right? If we
It
can start
was. It
optimizing towards
was.
other sources, that would be great. I think, there, to your point, there's still a lot of work that needs to be done to make the MMM more accessible to the people who are going to be making the decisions,
Yeah.
right? Because we still live in a world where people are using platform analytics that give last click or 1 day impression, 7 day click, whatever numbers.
Yeah.
And they're seeing that. And then you're giving them, MMM said this. And while we ran this incrementality experiment, it said this. And it's still a very difficult position to be in, where you need to say, I need to make a decision how much I'm going to spend in this channel, or how much, if I have an extra budget to spend somewhere, where should I put that budget? But there still is a lot of interpretation, a lot of pulling together of information that needs to be done to help
Right.
people make those decisions. It's not really a tackled solution. I don't think there's I don't know if this is like a SaaS play, a platform play where it's like, use our platform and we'll tell you what to do. I think people are trying for that.
Well, like let's Cassandra, right? Wasn't that sort of the is that, correct me if I'm wrong, is that not the vision of Cassandra? Basically be like, it's SaaS Robin. It's like you come, connect your data, and we'll do the rest.
Yeah, but that's still just MMM. That's not taking
Right. You're right. It doesn't connect the dots out at that point, but it does sort of, I don't know, democratize part one, and then in theory it could democratize part two if they connect the dots there, or at least have like, because I look at this and go, well, there's a somewhat simple calibration mechanism associated with just like what is the ROAS in platform, what is the ROAS we're seeing, and then you just have that graphed and you look at correlation, and if that correlation maintains over time, you understand when you're going to hit the point of diminishing returns, and you pull back.
Right, or what a lot of people there are a lot of people are now are talking about multipliers. Like, well, Meta says the ROAS is 1.8, MMM says it's 1, so we create a multiplier that says, well, we're going to take whatever Meta says, and based on our MMM, we're going to multiply that by 0.5.
Is anyone seriously talking about multipliers though in the data science community, or is that business people talking about it? Because I hear that and I go, that sounds like a great way to have some false precision. Like that just sounds like a recipe for like it's like Fahrenheit to Celsius conversion. It works and it's in a very tight little window. But when you get into like the negatives, you're like, oh my god, the multiplier does not work anymore.
Yeah, I mean it's more of a business side, right? It's helping people make decisions, right? If they, and this gets to one of your problems, that is like MMM is great for quarterly budget or monthly even, but like for the person who's going day to day into Meta and tweaking campaigns and doing the day-to-day stuff, they can't use the MMM is not going to help them. And if you're making those day-to-day decisions and you're looking at the numbers in Meta and it's telling you some ROAS of this new campaign you just launched, and you need just a general guideline of, well, I know Meta is usually overstating for these types of campaigns, so I'm going to take what it's giving me with a grain of salt. And if you have some sort of multiplier that you can apply to that, just as a almost back of the napkin math type of a situation for that person who's going day to day, then that can help them make those decisions, right?
Yeah. You different. I mean, there are a few ways for it. I don't think any of them are truly grounded in the depth of scientific rigor that need to occur. But to your point, they are guideposts, not direct. Not make this turn right now kind of thing. Which is sort of, I don't know. The nature of marketing is inherently imprecise, so it's one of those sort of. Look, there's everything else that we'd like. Our creative measurement is certainly far less precise than our budget measurement, and yet we still, let opinion often direct a lot of that, which I think is pretty interesting. Well, I mean, look, this is always it's a very interesting topic. I think is honestly, I was about to go down a whole different avenue associated with like in-platform incrementality testing versus like geo-based benchmark, because I think that's probably coming up right now. But maybe that's another episode. Maybe we'll talk about that in the future. I think maybe it would be great to get like someone from Measured or House on, and maybe even someone from Google to talk about the in-platform incrementality. Because I've been reading some things about that lately that make me a little skeptical.
I think you read the research paper that was going around.
That's right, I did. Yeah. That was an interesting read, but that's probably a good one to dissect on a future episode.
Yeah.
You always put everyone else on the spot for this, so I'm going to do it to you. Do you have an incremental insight for us today?
I don't.
Well, the incremental insight is join the MMM Hub.
Yeah,
if this is your first time thinking MMM, and this is your first time, or maybe not first time, but just like there is renewed pressure from the business, because one of the earlier notes that you made was, hey, Google's making a big push around this, and that is probably going to enlighten some folks. I think you even put a stat out there that was, according to a study with Kantar, 60% of US advertisers are currently using MMMs. I have to imagine this is sort of calibrated to larger advertisers, right? And then 58% of those not using these models, so that's about 20 some percent of all advertisers are considering of not using those, are considering doing so in the future. So that's a really, that's not 100%, but that is that group that maybe that group right there, the 50% who are not using it that considered it, maybe this is their push. And their boss is now coming to them saying, this is actually important to us. And we need to, I don't know, incrementality was the flavor of the year last year, or that was the thing everyone wanted to talk about. It still should be what we want to talk about, but maybe this is the phase 2, because Google, just like everything, I don't know, Samsung brings a cool new feature out on the Galaxy, and then a year later the iPhone does it, and everyone's like, whoa, look at this. And you're like, that's not new. It's not new. But you know what? It has mass market appeal, and that's okay. And that is fine because it changes it floats the whole industry.
There you go. Rising tide.
Absolutely. Well, if you are that individual and you are finding yourself sitting there and that your boss is coming to you saying, hey, we got to get started with Meridian, and you find yourself somehow at a little Mexican restaurant in Idaho, perhaps it's time to measure up.